everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're going to be recapping week 14 of the NFL season. Honestly, a fantastic week of football. There were some crazy games, a lot of close games, a lot of drama. I feel like there's probably a lot of drama in your guys' fantasy football leagues. There definitely was in ours, a really tight playoff race. So, yeah, a fun weekend, a lot of really good games. I had a lot of fun. How was yours?
Um, Fun and exciting, yes. Devastating and heartbreaking as well. One of the more brutal weeks, I should say, but I mean, like the NFL games were really, really good. From a personal agenda, horrible. But it's kind of been like that all season. So nothing new, but I mean, nonetheless, a lot of really good games. Take away my personal side of it, absolute disaster class, which we'll talk about later, but pretty interesting week coming off of a crazy, coming out talking to you right now on a Monday night after two absolutely wild games that went in a way that we did not think was going to go. So, but we'll get to that soon too.
Yeah, definitely. And not to pile on to you or anything, but I am the picks champ again this week. So I'm on a little roll and I think you need to crown me. It's your punishment.
You know,
Not to rub on with the
you
Herbert
go to
injury.
you go to LA and my quarterback gets hurt and you win and wow, okay, there you go, Dan. I'll crown you for like the fourth week in a row. Wow. The the pain never stops, I guess, is the story of this week.
I appreciate you for being a good sport. You've been a good sport, and yeah, has been a little bit unlucky. Full disclosure, I think Josh was like the one team out of our playoffs in our fantasy league. It was really close. It really came down to like points for or head to head or whatever it is. It's really close, but yeah, a rough week. And but anything else you want to say before we get into it?
Yeah, points for by like 30 points gets me out of the playoff race. Just some brutal weeks. Herbert dropping a one piece didn't help. Herbert getting hurt didn't help. Disaster class. Let's move on.
Let's move on to a pretty fun segment. We're going to start something new here. We're going to try to kind of decipher who the MVP should be. We're going to say who we think the MVP should be. And we'll start off right now with Dak Prescott, the odds-on favorite to win MVP right now. He's absolutely balling, coming off a huge win against the Eagles. He's got 3,505 passing yards, which is the third most, 28 touchdowns, which is the most, six interceptions, and a 74.6 QBR, which is the second best. And then you go over to Brock Purdy, this man over here, who's also just been absolutely balling for the best team in the NFL right now. He's got 3,553 yards on, which is the second most in the NFL. He's got 25 touchdowns, which is the second most. He's only got seven interceptions, and he's got the 74.7 QBR, the best in the NFL. And I think the most impressive part about Purdy's kind of case to win this is he has 9.9 yards per attempt, which is the highest average by any passer over 65 years. He literally has 359 passing attempts, and Dak Prescott has 450. So that's kind of the one thing that makes this close for me is just so efficient on so much less passing attempts. And yeah, just really special from both these players. Who do you think is the MVP?
Dude, I mean, looking at their stats and looking at their play, it's so incredible because they are so close and the race is so close. I mean, it's literally 150 Dax, 200 plus 200 Purdy. It's unbelievable. And then obviously I'm gonna do an honorable mention right now. Third should definitely be Tyreek Hill. But wow, this is incredible. I mean, both these guys, which you just said this at the beginning of the season, it's not Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. It's you got Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy. I'd have been like, what? I mean, like, I could see these guys like pushing, for top 10, but not the best player in the NFL, which they have been nothing short of the best player in the NFL. These are the two most surgical quarterbacks in the NFL. They are playing lights out football, and both teams are rocking and rolling. I mean, statement win from the Dallas Cowboys against the Eagles. And I am going to lean towards Dak right now just because, I mean, the way Dak's playing and just I feel like, I know this is wrong by saying this, but I kind of feel a little skewed towards Dak because I feel like really his one weapon is CeeDee Lamb, where Brock Purdy's got a plethora of weapons, which is not fair to compare that. But I kind of lean towards Dak more because I feel like what he's doing with, I mean, the Cowboys are an incredible team too, and with an incredible defense. But I feel like what Dak's doing, and it really is CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. But I mean, I feel like the 49ers just have a lot of way better overpowered targets, including Christian McCaffrey, running back, who's an incredible receiver. So it makes it a little bit more impressive to me that Dak's doing it. Still with an incredible team, but I feel like with a little less weapons than what Purdy's doing it with.
Yeah, you worded that perfectly. I think it's pretty obvious to say that Purdy does have the best situation in the NFL around him. It's literally a perfect situation. You can't argue with that. But at the same time, you have to give the guys flowers. They're the number one team in the NFC and the NFL, and both teams are 10-3. The Niners have the tiebreaker over the Cowboys because they quite honestly dominated the Cowboys in that head-to-head
First team to
matchup.
clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah.
Tennessee, or I mean, excuse me, 49ers, not Tennessee. But Tennessee, wow, tonight, let's just say
I'm
what
excited
just
to talk about that, whatever that was. But
happened.
yeah. Yeah, I do agree. Like Purdy, I think the situation around him is kind of the tiebreaker, and that's how you give it to Dak. Dak's gonna win the award. Let's be real. If Dak keeps this pace up, if he doesn't have a disaster class the next few weeks, he's gonna win the MVP. The Cowboys, aspect to everything, fan favorite aspect. He's a really good guy. Dak's gonna win the MVP, but I just think Brock Purdy should get his flowers, and I think I might even give him my MVP because he's balling, he's playing some incredible football, and he's just not being respected.
Yeah, I mean, nonetheless, both these guys are incredible. You're leaning Purdy, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, just because I love Purdy, it's so close, but I
I
would
mean,
give it
and
to Purdy.
He's not a vet. I mean,
Yeah,
Purdy's young. This is pretty incredible for him to be this systematic, this fluent. I mean, given he's in a Shanahan offense, which is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's hard to not succeed, but given the circumstances, I feel like it is hard to be an NFL quarterback and not succeed. I mean, I'm sure plenty of them wouldn't. And no one, I mean, he really is playing to a level and he's doing everything. I mean, you can't hate on Purdy. What he's doing is just ridiculous. I do favor Dak a little bit more this year, and as most other people do, clearly because of the favorites. But yeah, I mean, both are just MVP. I mean, if it could be a dual MVP, it would. I mean, because these guys are so close. But yeah, I do favor Dak just a little bit.
yeah, Dak is going to win the award. I just want to give Purdy his flowers. I feel like he doesn't have as much people as he should backing him, so I want to be one of those people. He's just absolutely been balling, and we'll talk about him more with the Niners recap segment. But with that, we'll get on to our game recaps. We got a lot to go over. We had a lot of really good games. We'll start off with this odd game, which was kind of a theme of the weekend. The Patriots went into Pittsburgh and beat the Steelers 21-18, and Zappy was throwing some dots. He was really kind of dicing up the Steelers from the beginning. He was just playing really well. He started off playing some really good football. He was 19 for 28, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just 1 pick. So a really good, solid performance from Zappy, and they kind of just kept the lead the whole game because he's playing some solid football. The Steelers kind of had a comeback attempt at the end there, but it just wasn't enough for the Patriots defense, which has really stepped up, honestly, the last few weeks. The Patriots defense has kind of looked like the Patriots defense of old. It seems like they kind of took a few month break in the middle of the season, but they are playing pretty good football, and Bill Belichick has been playing good. And I think Bailey Zappi's playing really good. How did you like Zappy?
Yeah, a lot of bad quarterbacks overperforming this week is kind of the moral of the story, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, I mean, Bailey Zappi, give him his credit. I mean, 18 of 28, 240, three touchdowns. I mean, and he's making some big time throws. I mean, I wish I had PFF's things pulled up right now, but I don't. But the amount of big throws, it seemed like Zappy had a lot of big time throws, which was really impressive. And they were doing this without arguably their best player in Ramondre Stevenson. And I mean, Juju's your best receiver. I mean, the Patriots receiving core is just awful. So Zappy doing this with Juju as his wide receiver one. Zeke Elliott coming in at, with the most amount of receiving yards at 7 catches for 72 and a tug.
They had 3 receivers on roster because Demario Douglas and Devontae Parker and Kayshawn Booty were all out.
Yeah, I mean, what he did with this team against a really good Steelers defense, I mean, kudos to him. It was a good game. He played good. He had a lot of big time throws. Zeke kind of looked a little refreshed. I mean, he didn't have a great yards per carry, but I mean, he had like 150 total yards. So I mean, it was a good game for the Patriots. I don't know if that's good for them. I mean, they're already eliminated from the playoff contention. So I don't know if it was good for them to win, to possibly not have a 1 or 2 pick. I think they still are in the 2 position right now. I don't know if how much more of these you'd want to win, because you do want to end up ultimately with a Drake May or a Caleb Williams on your roster. But it was a weird game, and they came out on top somehow. So kudos to them.
Yeah, Drake May is the ultimate vision, so definitely you don't want to lose sight of that for sure. But when you get into the fantasy takeaways for the Patriots, it's Zeke is here for your fantasy season. He's here to save your fantasy playoffs. If you picked up Zeke, it's looking like he's going to be a real league winner, honestly, with Ramondre probably being out the next few weeks, and Demario Douglas should be back next week, so that is big for the Patriots. And then for the Steelers, I told you guys do not start Najee or Jalen Warren, and they did even worse than I could have expected. It was a really rough outing. Mitchell Trubisky looked really bad. The Steelers fans kind of lost all hope in him after like the first quarter. He was already getting booed. He was rough. Just a bad performance. He did throw a good touchdown to Deontay Johnson, so Deontay Johnson ended up getting there in fantasy. But other than that, it was just a rough outing for the Steelers, really.
Yeah, brutal for the Steelers. Weird game. And brutal for, I mean, if the Steelers are hoping to make the playoffs, this is one they really couldn't afford to drop. I mean, they've lost some to the back to the Cardinals and the Patriots. 2-3 win teams. So not what you love to see as a Steelers fan.
Definitely. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Texans went into New York and lost to the Jets 30-6. It was a interesting rainy game in New York. It was 0-0 at halftime, but something really clicked for the Jets in the second half, man. They played well together. Wilson played well. He kind of clicked. He with his teammates. He played in rhythm. He did a good job of getting it off to his stars. I thought Brees and Garrett Wilson were really able to kind of get theirs against a really good Texans defense, honestly. So I was impressed by that second half. The Jets made some good adjustments, and it was a good game. I want to shout out just both these defenses, or I guess more the Jets defenses. Jets defense is a top. You've been saying it all year that they're the best defense in the NFL, and they're right there. You could argue the Jets, Broncos, Browns right now. They're incredible. And yeah, that Jets defense is a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, you shut down CJ Stroud, for 10 completions for 91 yards. That's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how you do that against a rolling. I mean, obviously it was a weird rainy game. It kind of seemed like the Texans were a little bit asleep at the wheel. Nico Collins did leave with an injury, which is pretty devastating. Obviously, they don't have Tank Dell. So it just kind of seemed like, I mean, obviously at the half when it was, when it was punt, 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 it just seemed like the Texans were defeated. It just kind of seems like they went out there. Maybe they expected to kind of walk in and win this game, but kudos to the Jets. They went out there. They were the team that wanted it more. And like I said, it was the story of bad quarterbacks playing good this week. So kind of crazy right there. But yeah, the Jets played like they had nothing to lose, and they wanted it more out there. And you could feel it on the field, and you could feel it watching. And I mean, Garrett Wilson was wide open. I mean, it was like no one was guarding that dude. And then, I mean, any kind of spectacular catch Garrett Wilson comes up with. So, really want to shout out Garrett Wilson. I know he's been kind of getting. I mean, the Jets, the whole team in general, their offensive line and everything has been getting unprecedented amount of hate and slander towards them. I think it's just comes down to a quarterback that goes out there and is confident and just makes timely throws, which he did today, which is probably the first time we've ever seen in his career. So I mean, look at the Jets defense, look at their weapons when the offense seems to be flowing. It's pretty good. The Jets offensive line played a hell of a game out there. I mean, shut down the Texans. Yeah, Texans were deflated. Brutal day if you had CJ Stroud in fantasy. If you had any Texans options in fantasy, Nico Collins, you really got hurt from that. And on the Jet side of the ball, those who started Garrett Wilson and Brees did all right this week. They had good games.
Yeah, I really hope that the Jets fans kind of take away from this one that their team was not dysfunctional. The Jets are really not even close to being the most dysfunctional team in the NFL. If you go look at the Panthers, if you watch Bryce Young play football, that is dysfunction. That is not getting a quarterback evaluation. That is literally the most dysfunctional offense. But then you go watch the Jets. There is some star power on this team, man. You saw it. You get the ball to an open Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. They make plays. There's some absolute stars. And yeah, like you said, they got there in fantasy because they are just playmakers. The Jets have stars all over that team. So that whole the Jets are just dysfunctional and everything was crazy. As you see it, you just get someone that can be in rhythm, be on time, and good things happen. This Jets team is really, really talented, even with all the injuries. So,
Jets are probably 10-3 at this point. If Aaron Rodgers, if not better, I mean, that defense is single-handedly could win you games week in, week out. You're a 10-win team, in my opinion, with an Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so super positive game for the Jets. You do love to see that, and you're happy for those two fantasy options moving forward. And for the Texans, a little bit, just kind of a throwaway game. It was really unfortunate. Hopefully, Stroud can clear that concussion protocol. You don't want to see that. And I did have one note, positive note. D'Amico Ryan's D line stunts are just overwhelming. Ever since his San Fran days, he's just got some crazy D line stunts that the NFL has never seen, and it works every time. So love to see that. The Texans defense didn't look good in the second half, but the first half they did do good. So yeah, interesting game. And yeah, any other takeaways?
No, yeah. Again, I'll say it, bad quarterbacks playing good this week. So it was kind of it was just a weird week, and we'll get into some more.
Yeah, that's a good transition into our next one. We'll go on to the Colts going into Cincinnati and losing to the Bengals 34-14. This guy, Jake Browning's kind of balling right now. He's kind of dealing. He played really good against the Jaguars last week. He went 18 for 24, 275 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick in this one. He really sparked the Bengals in the second half. He was kind of relentless. He just kept going and was throwing some nice balls. So you do love to see that. And Gardner Minshew's still playing some good football. It was just a really good competitive game. You knew it would be with these two AFC wildcard competitive teams. It was also kind of fun. It was a rematch of the Apple Cup from years and years ago when Gardner and Jake Browning played at Washington and Washington State. So fun game. It was a good fantasy output game as well.
Yeah, Jake Browning balling these past 2 weeks. 18 of 24, 275, 2 touchdowns. Also got a touchdown on the ground. It was kind of impressive. And also, want to shout out the Bengals running backs because Joe Mixon had a hell of a game, and so did Chase Brown. Chase Brown, I think it was a 56-yard touchdown he took on a screen to the house. It was a great week. Joe Mixon found the end zone too. Chase Brown ended up being the leading receiver, 3 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. So these Bengals running backs were getting it done through the air and on the ground and kind of really carried. And Jake Browning seems to be dealing. And it was good to see T. Higgins. He had some big time catches. He was 2 for 72, so not a lot of targets, but some big time catches. So it was a good game, and the Bengals really clicked on all cylinders. And it looks like they can be somewhat competitive with Jake Browning going forward. He's really playing some good football. And Jake Browning, essentially, people kind of forget who he even was, but he was a really, really good college football player, had a devastating injury that set him back, and it's kind of been practice squad to practice squad. I believe he got cut from the Titans, found his way onto I think it was Minnesota's practice squad. They cut him. Then the Bengals ended up signing him, and then he gets his chance to start, and he looks pretty decent. Jake Browning looks actually like he can be a competitive, quarterback. So Bengals 7-6, right in the playoff mix without Joe Burrow kind of going forward. I would say, this was a statement win over a good Colts team, and it keeps them right there in the mix. So it's kind of interesting going forward. It's gonna be a super tight race. I think we have a handful of teams at 7-6 just on the outside looking in.
Yeah, huge win to even the record up with the Colts in this insanely tight AFC race. And yeah, like it does seem like Browning will be able to kind of keep them in this race. I think the Bengals will be in there at the end of it, and it's going to be a really close one. When you get into the fantasy takeaways for the Bengals, Jake Browning is really making the Bengals options all do pretty well. Joe Mixon's probably going to score a touchdown every game because the Browning is getting them to the red zone. So you do love that. You love to see T. Higgins get more involved. Wasn't Chase's best game, but he'll do better. And Chase Brown, those Brown brothers are insane athletes, man. I saw Sidney Brown making some plays for the Eagles against the Cowboys. Just some insane athletes. So Chase Brown's honestly a good handicap or handcuff running back. And you go into the Colts. Zach Moss has been a little bit disappointing since taking over JT. We kind of thought he'd be the league winner. So hopefully he's better for the fantasy playoffs because it's been a little bit rough. And Michael Pittman continues balling.
Just want to shout myself out. Beginning of the NFL Secrets podcast, back in draft season, back at the beginning of fantasy, I told everyone, look out for Chase Brown. It only took 14 weeks or whatever, but Chase Brown, pretty good football player. And I'm going to go all the way back to our April session and shout myself out because I was pretty high on Chase Brown.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. He's honestly really fun. I'm excited for that running back duo, honestly, moving forward. And like I kind of said before this, with Alec Pierce getting more targets, Josh Downs is a scary option. Josh Downs had a bad game, so it's really kind of just Michael Pittman and Zach Moss who's kind of struggling right now for the Colts.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting how these guys finish out the season. I mean, it's gonna be. I'm a little scared of Colts options, but yeah, you feel confident in Michael Pittman.
Definitely. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Rams went into Baltimore and lost to the Ravens 37-31 in overtime. And if you guys missed this game, this was casually just like the greatest football game ever played on turf. It was kind of just insane. They were just trading touchdowns back and forth at the end. Stafford and Lamar were playing MVP football, each of them. Stafford's been playing great this year, but yeah, Lamar's still on his MVP form. They're both playing awesome. Shout out to Odell, by the way. He's really rejuvenated the last few weeks. He's playing some great football. So yeah, this was a really fun game. Tylan Wallace comes away with that kick return in the end, and it was electric. It was kind of anyone's game because it was so back and forth and such a high scoring offensive power game. And you really love for the Rams to see Puka and Cooper Kupp both just being stars and really getting involved. So that's awesome. I feel like this was kind of a positive takeaway for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, somehow, I mean, the Rams are a really good football team. The Rams, like I think you said in a previous podcast, went from F them picks to we need all them picks. And what they're able to do and the amount of starters and, frankly, they found stars I mean, they had like 13 picks last year, I think from like round 3 and on, and they hit on a lot of them. And one of those guys being Puka Nacua. I mean, they've really, really been able to draft well. And it kind of shows because we were laughing at their team at the beginning of the season, just like, who are these people? And now I'm laughing at them because I'm like, why are they competitive? Why could the Rams somehow make the playoffs in the NFC picture? They're in contention. That's kind of crazy. They look like they were going to beat the Ravens, who are one of the best teams in the AFC, if not the best team in the AFC. So overall, just wild game from the Rams, hanging in there, being competitive. Just kind of they're like the Colts, in my opinion, of the NFC. They're just a team you don't want to play. Obviously, the Colts had a bad week this week, but just a very, very frisky football team with a lot of underrated, stars, up and coming stars. So, I mean, this Rams team, in my opinion, has a very bright future. Really, really good GM talent. Really, really good coaching talent. Obviously, those guys have just kept them competitive. They've just really built this roster well with what they've had to do after going all in and winning a Super Bowl. So just impressive stuff from the Rams. But ultimately, thriller in overtime. The Ravens return, score a touchdown on, and ultimately win this game. But I honestly thought the Rams were the better team. I kind of thought the Rams, they played Lamar and everything. I kind of felt like they were the better team. Obviously, the Ravens are the better team and they come out on top. But I mean, what a football game.
There were a good amount of moments. It did seem like the Rams were going to win this game. But yeah, the Ravens are just so insane at home. They're always finding ways to win at home, and yeah, that's a hardball way. You love to see it. And fantasy takeaways for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson definitely probably would have been the stud of the week if we did a stud of the week this week. He's just absolutely insane. 3 touchdowns, all to the 3 stars on that receiving game. Odell, Zay Flowers, and Isaiah Likely. So I think Odell and Zay Flowers are kind of starts, and I think I'm personally starting Isaiah Likely over Dallas Goedert in the playoffs this week. So that's kind of, if you guys have Isaiah Likely, I think that's a good kind of measure tool. I think that's a really good start this week. So I don't know about Keaton Mitchell. Not too involved. I don't think they really run it that much
Mars
anymore.
RB1. Lamar's RB1, baby. And that's what we like to see. That's what we like to see for Lamar owners.
Lamar's RB1 and he's just throwing dots. He's dicing up defenses. So yeah, you do love to see it. And then for the Rams, Stafford's honestly kind of been insane. You can probably start him, and Kyron Williams continues his dominance on the ground. You start him, and Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, like I said, you're really excited that they're both getting involved, both the stars. And yeah, really exciting for all these options. They're all stars.
Yeah, incredible game this week. This was definitely one of the game of the week.
Yep, I think you start them all. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. NFC South matchup. The Buccaneers went into Atlanta and beat the Falcons 29-25. And it was a big win for the Buccaneers. They even up with the same record. It really keeps them in the thick of things for the NFC South. So you love to see that. And Baker really just has that clutch gene in him. He really does this. He always does this. He always comes away with these wins. You kind of knew he was going to come away with this win over Ritter, even after Ritter scored the late touchdown. It's just really exciting. Baker's honestly kept this Bucs team in like every game all season. I can't even really remember a game where they got dominated. So you do love to see it. Mike Evans, Antoine Winfield, this guy right here has been making plays every single game. So you love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, hell of a game. Again, as we kind of felt this was going to be a very close game. It ended up being that. But I mean, Rachaad White, Baker Mayfield. I mean, Rachaad White's a superstar, man. He is so good, whether it's on the ground or through the air. He's one of the superstar running backs in the NFL right now. So this is Rachaad White's, era, and we're going into it, and it's going to be exciting to see him moving forward, because I really think he is the star running back. But yeah, like you said, Baker, they played every single team close. I don't think there's been one blowout for the Bucs all season. And I picked him this week. I finally picked him. I've been hating on him week in, week out. And I finally was like, you know what? I'm picking them to win. And they did. So thank you, Baker, for that. At least it gives me one more total win on my record. But on the Falcons side of things, I mean, when you're forcing Desmond Ritter to throw the ball 40 times, that's probably a good thing. So it's probably a good thing for the Buccaneers. They played their style of football. They got Desmond Ritter where they wanted him, and he played okay. It wasn't his worst game. I mean, he threw for 350 yards and he ran a touchdown. It wasn't Desmond Ritter's worst game, but I mean, he did make his mistakes. He did have his interception. He did take a sack. So I mean, but in my opinion, the Buccaneers are the better team, and that's why they came out on top.
Yeah, the Falcons did well. I honestly thought Arthur Smith was kind of in his bag a little bit. Like he was dialing up some really, really nice deep shots for London and Pitts. Really kind of letting them have their best performances. He was kind of involving Bijan more in the receiving game. So Arthur Smith was kind of in his bag with the passing game. I'm kind of interested to see if the Falcons had someone that wasn't Stinky Ritter out there. I think London would be a real star. So that is interesting. But in the end, yeah, Stinky Ritter's turnovers kind of lost it in the end. And Baker was the better quarterback, and he came away with the W in the end. And going into fantasy takeaways, Bijan, he gets a touchdown, which is nice. He needs more carries. He's still just not getting enough carries. He is getting enough work in the receiving game, which is nice, but that's annoying. And then, yeah, like I said, Drake London, star, you start him for your playoffs. Don't even think about it. And Kyle Pitts is getting there. He's getting into contention for startable, but if you start him, he's going to get 0 points. So that's a little bit scary. And then for the Buccaneers, Rachaad White, like you said, is a real star running back. That's honestly really fun. I think we were both really high on him, and even us, I don't think we saw him being like a 3-down workload running back. So it's awesome. He's an absolute stud in the receiving and running game. Chris Godwin has a really good game. So yeah, you love to see it. Mike Evans disaster class, but you love to see everything else.
Yeah, no, everything else is really good. Bijan should have had another touchdown. Ritter at the goal line on a little 2-yard out that he would have walked in the end zone just in Ritter fashion, just sailed it over his head. But that's Desmond Ritter. Obviously, he's Bijan's fantasy production this whole year, but Bijan is starting to get his own a little bit, which is good and healthy to see, and positive going into next year.
Yeah, and Falcons fans don't hate me for calling him Stinky Ritter, but man, once you guys get a good quarterback in there, like that's not Stinky Ritter. I'm genuinely so excited for that. You guys are going to be a very good, like almost contender in the NFC. So love to see it for the Falcons, even though you lost. It's honestly a positive takeaway for both NFC South teams. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Lions went into Detroit and lost. I'm tripping. The Lions went into Chicago and lost to the Bears.
Yes, sir.
28 to
Yes, they did.
13. Wow. Like, wow. Justin Fields, shout out to Justin Fields and Matt Eberflus. They both really have a lot to prove, and they both kind of proved a lot. So I just wanted to shout out those two, really.
Justin Fields fighting, clawing, big time win to keep his job. I mean, this is Justin Fields' resume at this point on why he should be the starter for the Bears. I still don't know if he could, look like Superman out there and still keep his job, obviously, just because if they end up with that first pick, and obviously you got, Houdini, Caleb Williams, as your the obvious generational talent, which I don't know if Justin Fields can ever get to that level, but he played a hell of a game, and I mean they went and they beat up on a Lions team. I mean, they looked like the better team out there. Justin Fields was playing surgical football. He played good enough. DJ Moore playing really good football. I mean, and Justin Fields 231 touchdown, but also getting it done on the ground where he seems, when he has that healthy mix of run and pass, and they can kind of figure it out. Chicago on how to involve Justin Fields, right? They can be a very lethal, dangerous football team. And they almost beat the Lions a couple weeks. They almost could have gone 2-0 versus the Lions. But I mean, this was a big statement win for the Bears. And I'm happy for Justin Fields. And at the same time, I'm starting to hit the panic on the Lions. Lions freak me out. Their defense is scaring me. Their offense didn't look nearly as proficient this week. Goff got outplayed by the Bears defense, and shout out to the Bears for having a hell of a game plan versus them. But I mean, the Bears were clicking on all cylinders, and the Lions were the complete opposite. So I don't know if it's a fluke game, but this Lions team, let me just go back to I think it's previous 5 weeks, and let me tell you how much points this Lions defense has given up. So let me tell you, dating back to we'll start on the Chargers game. So 38 points to the Chargers. Next week, 26 to the Bears. Next week, 29 to the Packers and a loss. Next week, 28 to the Saints, barely a win. This week, 20. I mean, they're giving up 28 plus points in just back-to-back weeks. And you go back the previous 2 weeks, 38 to the Ravens. I mean, it's just been a pretty brutal defensive output for these Lions, and it just seems like teams are able to get whatever they want against them.
Yeah, like should we have a conversation about the Lions? I don't know. I feel like I've been kind of alluding to it ever since our Chargers game recap. What was that, 5 weeks ago? I kind of was feeling a little bit suspect after that game, and ever since I've been kind of saying it in every podcast. And now we're getting to the point where it's like, do we press the panic button? Are we too early on it? Are the Lions real contenders? Do they have the top tier star talent to put them over that edge? Right now, I can't really tell you that answer at all. I personally, I'm saying no. I need to see more. I need to see more electricity. Like Amon-Ra needs to be way more involved. I don't know what they're really doing on offense. They're not making it as electric enough. Their defense is just not like, really keeping them in games. So their offense kind of has to be perfect. And yeah, it's just I don't know. I that might be the thing is the Lions kind of have to be perfect now to win games because their defense isn't playing as good as it was at the beginning of the year.
It's like they were so perfect on all 3 phases of the ball, and now they're so dysfunctional. All of a sudden these past few weeks, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I mean, they've dropped a lot of games. I mean, the Lions could easily have probably the best record in the NFL, but they have just dropped weird games, and all of a sudden, these last 5-6 weeks, they've just looked like a dysfunctional football team. And I don't know where that stems from or why that's happening. Obviously, you've lost some good defensive players due to injury, but at the same time, it's just like they seem, and I mean, they're still a 9-4 football team. You can't discredit that, but they just feel like a dysfunctional football team at this point.
No, I do think we actually just cracked the code, not gonna lie. It is because the Lions defense is playing so bad that they do really have to play perfect on offense. And the two picks for Goff was not perfect. He's been far from perfect for weeks now. So I do think that is the problem. If this Lions defense doesn't shape up into its early season form to where they're kind of dominant and Aiden Hutchinson was kind of game wrecking, I don't think this Lions team will take them over the edge of what the Eagles, Cowboys in the playoffs, the 49ers, who are all steamrolling anyone that they come across. They're firing on every single cylinder. I'm not going to put the Lions over any of those teams. I'm not favoring the Lions over any of those teams. So that I think that is the thing. Jared Goff has to play perfect football, and he's not right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're in the playoffs by their record by default right now, but as of right now, they're not a playoff football team. Even though they're in the playoffs and will make the playoffs, they're not a playoff football team. And yeah, I mean, with these superpower teams in the NFC, like you just said, you have the Cowboys and the Eagles and the 49ers. This with how the Lions are playing, they don't stand a chance.
Yep. And shout out to Matt Eberflus for real. Like he really has had the Bears defense playing really well the last few weeks. Jalen Johnson, 0 catches allowed, 0 passer rating allowed, 1 interception. He's such a stud. He's making all the contenders regret not trading for him at the deadline. He's a star. And yeah, you do love to see that for the Bears. Justin Fields was awesome. And you go into fantasy takeaways, Justin Fields and DJ Moore is like one of the better duos in the NFL, which is really awesome. It's really fun. The running back situation for the Bears, you stay away from rest of season. Deontay Foreman being the bell cow in this game is so odd. The Bears are weird, and Cole Kmet is also a star, so you do love to see that. And then for the Lions, all their options have kind of been, dying down the last few weeks. I'll be honest, I have a league with Laporta and Amon-Ra, and I've been losing the last couple of weeks because they're just kind of not really coming through. And Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery haven't really been too dynamic like they were earlier on in the season. So the Lions are just kind of tapering down slowly, and it's a little scary.
While the Lions did average 6 yards a carry, Jahmyr Gibbs was averaging 6 yards a carry, and David Montgomery 6.6 yards per carry. But again, like you alluded to a few minutes ago, if Jared Goff and this offense isn't perfect, then their defense is just not going to give them a chance.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Jaguars went into Cleveland and lost to the Browns 31-27 in a really good, close back and forth game as well. This was one of the better games of the week. But let's talk about this man, Joe Flacco, because I feel like there's a lot of quarterbacks who are getting a lot of media around the NFL this week, who rightfully so, they all had really good games. But Joe Flacco had just as good of a game as really anyone in the NFL this week. He had a great performance. So I want to give Joe Flacco some flowers. I feel like he's literally not being talked about at all. I haven't seen anyone talk about his 26 for 45, 311-yard, 3 touchdown performance. He really was throwing dots. He was relentless. The Jaguars were trying to come back, and Joe Flacco was making it so Trevor couldn't really do so. So you do love to see it. Throwing to his star, David Njoku. David Njoku's like a wide receiver 1, and he's a tight end. You love to see it. The Browns are balling.
Yeah, and it's just it is a wild game. And yeah, Joe Flacco looking like an elite quarterback, in his 30s. It's just awesome to see. And he was functional. I mean, Joe Flacco on a good football team can win you games. And I mean, this is what was his second game? And he threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, kudos Joe Flacco. That is a masterclass game from you right there against a really good Jaguars defense. And maybe I know the Jets did trade for Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know if Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco work out on the same team, but if they had a functional quarterback like Joe Flacco this whole season, again, this Jets going back to the Jets, they could be a 10-win football team with a guy like Joe Flacco leading their roster. But the Browns ultimately benefit from him being on the waiver wire and being able to pick him up mid-season. Browns have gone through 4 quarterbacks, and they are 8-5. And so this is just a really good coach football team, just with stars all over it. And it was crazy to see. And it's crazy to see Jacksonville, drop this one. And Trevor, he had a really rough game with 3 interceptions, but they still had a chance to win this game. And it was just ultimately Joe Flacco who just kept putting up points, who just put it away. And so it was a really good football game. Trevor did throw some really brutal, really brutal picks. Shout out Martin Emerson, his career game this week. But yeah, I mean, it was just a wild football game, and it was cool to see Joe Flacco go out there and do that.
Yeah, I texted you right before this game when it was announced that Trevor was playing, and I said I'm still gonna stick with my Browns pick because that was kind of just careless. Flying Trevor across the country, going into Cleveland, into the weather against the best defense in the NFL, might I add. You're throwing him in there coming off a sprained ankle or whatever it was. That was just
That his
careless.
injury is weird. That whole thing is weird to me.
Yeah.
Um, I just I conspiracy time. He sprains his right ankle. In the replay, proceeds to put all his weight on the right ankle. It's like he forgot what ankle got hurt. And then they're like, it's like a devastating injury. He's being carried off the field. And then he's playing this week. And he was able to run. I mean, he was fine. He had some plays where he was actually moving around. I don't know if that's just the product of the NFL injecting him with
Oh,
what
he couldn't feel
looks.
his feet. You could have hit him
No,
over the kneecap with a bat. He wouldn't have felt his feet in
yeah,
that game.
I'm sure it's just the NFL injecting him with whatever weird stuff, whatever painkillers in his feet to where he couldn't feel anything. But just wild to see a sprained ankle turned into 5, 6 days later, he's in an NFL game playing. So shout out to Trevor Lawrence for being tough, but also conspiracy theory stores out here. Gotta say that. Awfully weird with some videos I saw, but that's for
Was
another.
was weird. And when you get into fantasy, you are happy that Trevor is playing because he makes ETN, Evan Ingram, who's an absolute star, all good options. I wouldn't really say Calvin Ridley. That whole Calvin Ridley and Trevor connection's weird. You got Trevor kind of talking in an interview saying that they just have to have a better connection. They need to be on the same page. And we're week 14 in the NFL season. So that whole connection's weird. Calvin really hasn't worked out. That's one thing I was wrong on. I really thought he would be good, but he's not the move. That was interesting. And then for the Browns, you're really happy. Joe Flacco makes these guys kind of really playable in fantasy. David Njoku and Amari Cooper are both like wide receiver ones, and Jerome Ford is actually a really good start as well. So you do love that.
Just want to also say, I mean, obviously both of these tight ends in this game. If we did a stud of the week, both honorable mentions for stud of the week. Both tight ends having 90 yards and 2 touchdowns is crazy. I'll just read Evan Ingram, 11 receptions, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. David Njoku, 6 receptions, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, both the leading receivers for the team. So hell of a week for the tight ends in this game.
Yeah, you really love it. And yeah, speaking of Evan Ingram, like he is a fill-in for Christian Kirk. With no Christian Kirk, he's like just filling in for Christian Kirk, and he's such a good receiver. You do love to see that. And with that we'll get on to the next one. The Panthers went into New Orleans and lost 28-6 in a pretty uneventful game. The Saints kind of handily won this one. Derek Carr wasn't bad at all. He played solid. He was playing confident. He was a little too confident. He a little too cocky at the end for throwing like 100 yards against this Panthers team, but it worked. They were able to get the job done. Kamara had a good day on the ground. Jamal Williams kind of got implemented in this one. So yeah, good game from the Saints. I don't think there was really too much to take away.
Not a lot from this game. Like, and again, like you said earlier, when we're talking about another team, you said Panthers are a dysfunctional football team. There's no talent on this team. It's just tough. I mean, obviously there is talent. You have Bryce Young, you have Brian Burns, but I mean, other than that, you have 2 good building blocks, one on each side. But other than that, it's rough. It's just not much going on. And this offense is probably the worst offense in football, from offensive line to wide receivers to running backs. It's just, frankly, it's terrible. And, they got to have a hell of an offseason to be competitive next year, and we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, some more shout outs like Brian Breesy might have been the best player in this game, and we both absolutely loved him. And so I guess we'll pat ourselves on the back for that one. Brian Breesy's kind of been a stud. Chuba and Miles Sanders were able to get theirs on the ground. So I guess we'll go into fantasy. Like, I think Chuba's a decent start. He's had 3 pretty good weeks in a row. So I think Chuba's a good start. Thielen had a good game, so I guess Thielen's the only other option. There's no one else for the Panthers. Like I said earlier, you can't really evaluate Bryce Young. He has the most dysfunctional situation by far in the NFL. That's the definition of one. And for the Saints, Kamara is a good start. Chris Olave gets a touchdown. He's a good start, and I think that's it.
Panthers don't even have a coach. That's just how dysfunctional they are. And it's gonna be, I mean, and just to add fuel to the fire on the Panthers right now, I mean, you don't even have your first overall pick. You gave that away to the Bears. So brutal, 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 brutal. And that's gonna be the moral of this.
Brutal. Yeah. And the Saints are in the thick of things with the NFC South, and the Panthers are not. But with that, we'll get on to the next one. The Seahawks went into San Fran and lost to the 49ers 28-16. Drew Lock couldn't get the job done against the best team in football, sadly. But man, Brock Purdy is just incredible. I'm such a big fan of Brock Purdy. So he just keeps coming. Always gonna he's probably gonna score 3 touchdowns every game. He's incredible. He's now second in the league in passing yards, and he's also 17th in passing attempts. So like, just take that in. He's second in the league in passing yards with the 17th most passing attempts. That doesn't even feel like a stat. And that is also a shout out to all the stars on this team. Like, shout out to Debo. He's a nuisance. He is the best runner after the catch, I think, in NFL history. I'm just gonna say it. He broke the record this week for the most rushing touchdowns of all time for a receiver, and he is just insane. He turns on those Jets, and he had the whole Seahawks team chasing after him this week, just like he had the Eagles team chasing after him last week. He's insane. He's been a game changer when he's healthy. Him and McCaffrey are just absurd. This Niners team is the best team in football, and it's not close.
Yeah, you just said that perfectly, and there's not more to add on top of that besides just stars. This, if you think of the 49ers, it's just solid stars and great coaching, and it works. And this team is gonna be, there in the end for a Super Bowl title. They're the team to beat right now, and we just need to be talking. I mean, I'm looking past playoffs because I'm thinking Super Bowl for 49ers at this point, and that's kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I think when we do our playoff predictions, I don't want to be boring, but I think we might have the same Super Bowl pick, and that should be pretty fun. I'm so excited for the Niners moving forward. You have to be the most excited about them than any team. Their defense is rolling, their offense is really rolling, so it's really fun. And for the Seahawks, it is Drew Lock's first start of the year. Not much you can do. DK Metcalf started it off with a really good touchdown. I guess we'll get into
Nearly
fantasy.
got ejected. I mean, Drew Lock. I mean, he had 2 interceptions, but he didn't play that bad of a game. He played
I
the
mean,
best. I mean, it
losing
was
like 12 to the Niners is not bad.
yeah. I mean, in your first start back, losing DK to an ejection doesn't help either. So, um, so who's the running back one for the Seahawks?
I was just gonna say, like, we'll go into fantasy. Zach Charbonnet out carries Kenneth Walker. If he's not out snapping Kenneth Walker, he out carries him. It's crazy. So you can't start Kenneth Walker in the fantasy playoffs. That's scary. I don't think you really want to start Charbonnet if they're both playing. You're just staying away from the Seahawks running back room for the fantasy playoffs, which kind of sucks. If you drafted Kenneth Walker in like the third round of your drafts, and then for the receiving side of things, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, both are kind of studs, and Jackson Smith and Jig was a dart throw. And for the Niners, you start every single option. If you want to throw a dart throw at Jordan Mason or Jawan Jennings, I don't care. This whole Niners team is just absurd, and they keep coming. They're going to score so many touchdowns, and they got a pretty good schedule here coming up.
Yeah, shout out 49ers, best team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, shout out to the best team in the NFL. And with that, we'll get on to the best game by far of the week. The Vikings went into Vegas and beat the Raiders 3-0. And I just got one. Like, I'm asking you this genuinely. Would you rather lose 3-0 to the Raiders or to the Vikings, or would you rather lose 72-20?
72-20. I would. That is the 3-0 is probably the most brutal score. That's obviously the lowest score of the year. I think there's one possible I guess 2 possible outcomes. You could score 0-0 and tie, or you could score 2-0. This is the 3rd lowest score you could possibly have in an NFL game, and they pulled it off. Just absolutely incredible. 3-0 with the one score coming in the 4th quarter. Just just gross. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Nick Mullins was playing in this game. Josh. Josh Dobbs, Aiden O'Connell, just a quarterback masterclass, and it was
Crosby single-handedly got Dobbs benched.
it was just tough. It was just a tough game to watch, and I mean, the only takeaway is, shout out to our boy. Now I blank his name because I can't even remember the Vikings kicker. Who is it?
Greg Joseph?
Yeah, shout out Greg Joseph for 3 points. You won the game, kid. So
Came
player of the
through.
week.
Came through in the absolute clutch. And there's not anything to talk about in fantasy in this one, but Justin Jefferson goes out, and if you started him, it's depressing. You don't want to see that. Just him going out with, what was it, 4 points. So you hate that. Hopefully he's fine to play this week. You kind of have to play him if he is playing. So that is interesting. I hope he's fine. Alexander Madison also hurts his ankle. So you really target Ty Chandler in your guys' waivers. Get Ty Chandler, because if Alexander Madison doesn't go, then Ty Chandler's like a really good start for the playoffs. So those are the only two starts other than TJ Hawkinson. You love TJ Hawkinson. And like I said, I was scared about Addison, even with Jefferson going out in this game. He was pretty bad. So I don't think I'm starting Addison in the playoffs. I think it's just Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Ty Chandler. I wouldn't start Alexander Madison no matter what. And then for the Raiders, Josh Jacobs also goes down. Both running backs go down in this one. I hope Josh Jacobs is okay. They play Thursday, so that's a little bit scary. Pick up Zamir Wright. I guess we can just say pick up Ty Chandler and Zamir White, especially if you have Jacobs and Madison, and then Devontae Adams has a good game, and that's it.
Yeah, gross. Just third lowest. I mean, third lowest possible outcome for a score in NFL history. It happened. So GG's to the Raiders and the Vikings. That was awesome.
And Raiders, I'm so excited for you guys to get Jaden Daniels. It's a lock. You guys can check out our mock draft that we posted a few episodes ago. But yeah, the Jaden Daniels is a Raider, and I want to end this one by saying that I'm sorry, Max Crosby. I truly am sorry. Like, free my boy. That guy is just so absurd. He literally led the team in tackles and just like all tackle for losses, and he's just insane. So shout out to Max, and we'll go into a really, really crazy game. The Bills went into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs 20-17. And let's just talk about that temper tantrum. Let's just talk about whatever that was. I mean, that was just very embarrassing, but I just want to say that was like a very selfish act as well, because he took all the spotlight from Josh Allen, who definitely deserved spotlight after that game. He went into Kansas City against a really good defense, by the way, and outplayed Patrick Mahomes. So I just think that was really selfish by Mahomes, just throwing an absolute fit, kind of taking all the media away from Josh Allen. And then when they went to go talk after the game, I'm sure everyone's seen it, Mahomes was still throwing a fit, swearing in Mahomes or in Josh Allen's face, and Josh was just like, okay, like like I've never had a reason to ever lose respect for Mahomes. I've never had a reason, but that was just Bush League, Little League stuff that I've ever never really seen in the NFL. It was just terrible from Mahomes. What did you think about it?
Pathetic. It was pathetic. That's pathetic from a guy who's the best. You are the role model of the NFL. You are the best player in the NFL. You have been. I've never seen anyone go out there, and especially a leader of a team, a quarterback, a leader of the NFL, one of the biggest the biggest face figure in the NFL, go out and throw a temper tantrum because you committed a penalty. Like, I'm sorry, but it was, you go see the play. Kadarius Toney, his foot was a yard past, and it's not like the ref intentionally threw it after he saw the Chiefs score. The flag was thrown during the play, and Kadarius Toney's foot was over a yard offsides. I mean, I don't even know how he thought it was okay to line up a foot past the center. It was so weird. And I get the call. I mean, I get it. It was not like something that would really affect the play in general, but I mean, it did. I mean, it was thrown before, and I mean, it was just pathetic seeing Mahomes and him going up and when he walks up to Josh Allen after the game and not even saying, "Hey, good game." It was the worst effing call I've ever seen. Like, and Josh Allen just kind of stood there like, oh, okay. Like, and this is coming from Patrick Mahomes, who gets in the Chiefs, they've won 2 Super Bowls in his tenure, and he has gotten every single call he could possibly get. The penalties have favored your way, Mahomes, most of your career. Shut up. Just shut up. Congrats, Josh Allen and the Bills, on a heck of a win and keeping yourself in playoff contention. You deserved it. You were the better team out there. You beat the run first Chiefs. They didn't have Isaiah Pacheco, which was their best player, as you said before the podcast. I should have picked against the Chiefs the second I saw Isaiah Pacheco was out. Yeah, just not impressive stuff from Mahomes.
Yeah, I want to quote Stephen A. Smith because he honestly said it best. He said, Patrick Mahomes may be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen, which is very true. But this was the first time we've seen him completely embarrass himself. And he really did just embarrass himself. Watching that video makes me cringe inside. And I'm far from a Mahomes hater. I love Mahomes. So just an all-time Bush League, all-time Little League sore loser move. Just terrible. I guess we'll move on from it. And shout out Josh Allen because he balled out. The Bills look like the Bills to me. I think ever since that Eagles game, the Bills do look kind of like the Bills. I think they're probably going to end up in the playoff spot, and I'm pretty optimistic about that. So shout out to the Bills. You go into fantasy. James Cook's been a star for the Bills. That's kind of been a big reason for the rejuvenation in the receiving and run game. He's been awesome. Dawson Knox returns on this one, so that is interesting. Dalton Kincaid does get hurt, but he's fine. So you do want to monitor that. Dalton Kincaid might be a little bit scarier. Stephon Diggs wasn't too productive, which is interesting. And immaculately, Gabe Davis does it. He drops a goose egg, and he's dropped a goose egg every other week for like, I don't know exactly how long, but I think it's been like 5 or 6 weeks. So it's pretty incredible stuff. I don't even know how he does it, but Gabe Davis, you're incredible. And yeah, and for the Chiefs fantasy options, you're really excited for Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. They're the focal point stars. And then if no Pacheco again, you can start the running backs if you want to dart throw. They're going to split time though, and if Pacheco plays, he's a star.
Gabe Davis got to be the biggest boomer bust of all time. When we're saying bust, we mean goose egg or 36 points. And it's incredible. It's incredible. Gabe Davis, what he does on a week in, week out basis is incredible, and it's like nothing we've ever seen. So GG's Gabe Davis. Wouldn't have expected anything more from you but a goose egg.
Yeah, and we'll end this one with just saying that Kadarius Toney isn't a football player. He's kind of just terrible at football, and like I think he's just actively holding the Chiefs back. He's actively hurting them, and I think they're literally just rewarding him for his return in the Super Bowl. I think that's the only reason he's still on the team and getting playing time, because I can't even explain how bad he is or why he's getting playing time still, but he is tremendously holding that team back. And we'll go on to the next one. The Broncos went into LA and beat the Chargers 24-7. I was at this game. It was a really electric atmosphere, a lot of Bronco fans in LA. And yeah, shout out to Russ. He really utilized his legs really, really well in this one. He kind of won the game with his legs in the end on the last few drives, and he converted some big third downs and kind of bought some time, making some nice runs with his legs. So you do love to see that. Russell Wilson kind of had a really good second half and won this game. And I guess the opposite end, Justin Herbert goes down with a broken finger. That's super unfortunate. You hate to see that, and it is looking like he might miss some time here with the Chargers, maybe not being in the playoffs.
Yeah, you shut Justin Herbert down for the rest of the year. You're out of the playoffs. You have a dysfunctional football team. You have a line that can't block. Don't want to take away from the Broncos. The Broncos played a hell of a football game. They have fantastic coaches. Vance Joseph was incredible. Sean Payton went out there and he, just outclassed, outperformed on every single level of his mind over the Chargers. And obviously Justin Herbert goes down early in this one. He was sacked 4 times. I mean, the game wouldn't matter if Justin Herbert was in or not. The Chargers were losing this football game. Justin Herbert was sacked 4 times in the first quarter by the Broncos defense. I mean, and at this point, I know Kellen Moore has been getting some shout outs for head coaching positions, but do we even really think he's I don't even think he's an offensive coordinator candidate at this point. I think he was. I mean, maybe we're hating too much on Mike McCarthy, and I don't know about Kellen Moore, it seems like what he struggles with and line protection, everything, he just hasn't been able to do it. And I don't know. I can't put two and two together. He's had good games, but what Kellen Moore has struggled with, he has not been able to correct over, in a course of an entire season.
Yeah, the Chargers have had a lot of problems this year. Kellen Moore has not been perfect. I wouldn't put too much blame on him, but yeah, like for example, it's just like the Chargers are going to charge her. Their luck is incredible. Like for example, Josh Palmer is coming back to practice this week, and uh Keenan Allen gets on the injury report. Herbert's out for a few weeks. It's just like they can't really get anything going right at the same time. It's just some type of curse that has to be. But yeah, going over to the Broncos again, Russell Wilson in the second half was 10 for 13, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 141.7 passer rating. So yeah, just
Probably
really
would have
good.
been 13 of 13 if Judy didn't drop.
Oh, dude, can we talk about Judy might be the worst receiver in NFL history. That is crazy. He had three pretty much touchdowns that he left on the field. It's crazy. He is just I'll hold my hand up. I was probably the biggest Judy guy in the world ever since his Alabama days coming into the season. Just I've always been a huge Judy guy, but he isn't a football player. He isn't kind of like Kadarius Toney. Something doesn't click, and he just isn't a good football player. It's so weird.
It's like they can move their bodies, I guess, kind of good, but they can't catch a football. But on the other side, I think Quentin Johnson did okay. He caught a screen and he did okay with it, and then he got a deep ball from Easton Stick. So maybe Judy just saw Quentin Johnson. He's like, "Hey, I got you, brother. Let's. I'll take the drops for you today."
Would you trade Judy for Quentin Johnson? Straight up?
I think I would hold on. I think there's more upside with Quentin Johnson at this point.
Come on, bro. I want Quentin.
I would not, if I was the Chargers, I would not trade Quentin Johnson for Judy just because of that game.
Dude, I swear Judy just has disaster classes against the Chargers every time. He's always dropping balls and stuff. But shout out to this guy, Cortland Sutton, right here. He's comes down with the best catch of the week every single week at this point. It's incredible. He has the second most touchdowns of any receiver in the NFL this year, and he is just playing at like a Pro Bowl level. So shout out to Cortland Sutton. He's really rejuvenated. You do love to see that. Javonte Williams is looking healthier every week. So for fantasy, you're really happy about Javonte, Sutton, and even Russ in fantasy because Russ is really using his legs. He really ran really well in this one. He looked like a young Russ. He was running all over and evading pressure. So he did a really good job. And then for the Chargers in fantasy, I'll pat myself on the back. I confidently said start Eckler. I called that. He had a really good fantasy performance. I took his under, and that also hit on rushing, but I knew that he would have a lot of involvement, especially in the receiving game. So Eckler is kind of like Eckler and Keenan Allen are kind of the only starts, and it's very scary with Easton Stick. But yeah, but it's just so hard with no Justin Herbert for fantasy with the Chargers, man.
One positive I want to end Chargers fans, and I'm going to call it right now, is looking like Brock Bowers the Charger. So lock it in, baby. April can't come soon enough. Draft season is here. Brock Bowers, you are a Charger, and we will clip this right now.
Brock Bowers is the Charger. That's definitely the positive that's coming out of all this. I can see right now. Sadly, Brock Bowers and Justin Herbert will definitely dominate the AFC West for a long time. It's probably going to be better than Mahomes Kelsey. It's going to be up there with it. That'll be an awesome duo. And
let's go. It's happening. We're locking it in. What date are we? We are December 11th. We are calling this. April can't come soon enough. But we're gonna make this statement right now. Brock Bowers is a Charger, December 11th. Put it in the books. You can see this on my phone. December 11th, Brock Bowers. I'm calling this right now, baby. Let's go.
And the last shout out real quick. We're kind of all over the place in this game because it's the Seekers Bowl. But I want to throw my Mahomes temper tantrum real quick because Jaquan McMillan, who's been absolutely balling this year, he deserves all the flowers in the world. He was robbed of a clear fumble six. That was very much so a fumble six. So,
oh, come on. His hand was going forward. It's Tom Brady. Come on.
Even if his hand was going forward, he tipped the ball out to make it a fumble. And the way that he recovered it too, Jaquan McMillan is a playmaker. He's been like a Chris Harris Jr.-esque slot corner for the Broncos. So he's been a revelation. So shout out to him. And I guess the last thing I'll say is Easton Stick was kind of throwing well. So I do think Keenan Allen's going to still be a good start against the Raiders on Thursday.
Yeah. Crazy good game for the Broncos. Dysfunctional Chargers.
Yeah. Definitely. And with that, we'll get on to the next one, the Sunday night football game. The Eagles went into Dallas and got dominated by the Cowboys, 33-13. The Cowboys do what they do best, and they dominated. Dak just continues his MVP level play. He just absolutely balling 271 yards, 2 touchdowns on this one. CeeDee Lamb is just incredible, coming down with amazing catches every week. They kind of just completely torched Bradbury and Slay, if I'm being honest. Like they've kind of been torched all season, if I'm being honest. And shout out to that Cowboys defense, though. That Cowboys defense has been game changing for them. 0 touchdowns for this dynamic Eagles offense is pretty incredible. Shout out to Stephon Gilmore, who had a master class in this one, just dominated all game long, making some great tackles. He was fantastic in coverage on AJ Brown. AJ Brown called him old at the beginning of the game, and he definitely took it personally. He definitely took that personally. Gilmore had a flash in the pan game. It was really fun to watch. A really good dominant performance from the Cowboys, like we predicted.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of felt like we knew this was going to happen, and it did. It just seemed like the Cowboys were going to come in here because of, I mean, ultimately how that last game played out. And the Cowboys, I mean, it was dominant. It was dominant football. And I mean, in back-to-back weeks for the Eagles, given they've had a really hard schedule these past like 5 weeks, um, losing, losing pretty handedly to the 49ers and the Cowboys is concern going into the playoffs. But I mean, I don't have any doubt that Philadelphia will be competitive when they play with these teams in the playoffs. But yeah, it was the Cowboys night, and it was, I mean, just shout out to their defense. I mean, holding them literally to 0 touchdowns. The one touchdown was off of a fumble recovery for a touchdown, with who I think could very easily win Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jalen Carter. That was a huge play by the Eagles rookie. That was phenomenal.
I think he
Uh,
secured it with that touchdown right there. I think that touchdown did it.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it was just the Cowboys night, and Dak and CD and Jake Ferguson, Tony Pollard playing better football. Just, I mean, just were rolling on all cylinders, and they were the better team, and they absolutely dominated.
Yeah, going into fantasy, you're starting Dak. Really excited about that. You're starting Pollard. He's getting really involved. You're starting CD. He's a star. You're starting Jake Ferguson. He's a star tight end at this point, and Brandon Cooks is kind of the next option, and I'm getting a little bit scared off of him just because they're really spreading the ball around. They're really kind of involving, Jalen Tolbert, Turpin. They're getting Michael Gallup more involved. So personally, I am going to bench Brandon Cooks this week for like an Odell Beckham type of player. So just monitor that for your team. And for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had a pretty rough outing, but you still start Jalen Hurts. It's going to get better. And DeAndre Swift has been kind of a problem, a real problem. He hasn't been too efficient at all for your fantasy team. So that's really scary because you kind of have to start him, and he's really not producing at all the last few weeks. But AJ Brown continues to be dominant. Devontae Smith continues to have a good game, and even Dallas Goedert had a pretty good involvement for his first game back.
Yeah, no, you just said all that perfectly. So kind of an Eagles flute game. Their stars will pick it up next week, so nothing really to worry about in fantasy. But it was just the Cowboys' night, and everyone on the Cowboys, obviously it's kind of a dart throw with some of the lower options, but yeah, you know who you're starting on both sides, and yeah, I wouldn't be too scared off by the Eagles. Obviously, this was a little bit of a flute game, but obviously they're playing just a fantastic Dallas team.
Yeah, there's not too much to take away for fantasy in this one, but there is a lot to take away for the real NFL aspect because this puts the Cowboys over the Eagles. This moves the Eagles from first in the NFC to fifth in the NFC. So that is just devastating, man. If I was the Eagles fan, that would hurt my heart right there. So I'm sorry for saying that, and we'll get on to the next one, the first of the Monday night games that started at the exact same time. Interesting. I don't know how, if you don't have multi-view on YouTube TV, how you could possibly watch these games. Like you just have to choose one, I guess. I don't know what the NFL was trying with this, but the Packers went into New York and lost to the Giants 24-22. The Giants have won 3 straight games. Tommy DeVito, Tommy Cutlets is kind of doing his thing. He honestly did play like a super clean game. He kind of kept his team in this game the whole game because he played really, really clean, really safe. He wasn't taking any chances. He didn't take any sacks. So you do like to see that. He was getting it off to Saquon, and Wan'Dale Robinson had a great game too. So yeah, shout out to Tommy Cutlets. He had a good game, and Jordan Love wasn't as sharp as he was the last few games in this one. He just kind of felt kind of off. I don't know what, if it was the the away environment getting into him, or I don't know what it was, but Jordan Love was kind of just off from the beginning. You could kind of tell it was weird vibes from the very start. So yeah, just shout out to Tommy in a interesting game.
Shout out to the best quarterback in New York, Tommy Mother DeVito.
Three
Best
win
quarterback
streak.
in New York. Best quarterback in New York right now. Tommy DeVito and the Giants are playing okay. Saquon Barkley is absolutely electric. Just felt like every touch that dude was just doing something spectacular with it, in my opinion. He just couldn't be stopped. And it was just it was just one of the two weird games that happened tonight. Not the outcomes we were expecting, not what we predicted, polar opposite. And yeah, it seemed like Jordan Love kind of regressed to the mean this week. He was just absolutely been playing on fire. And then when he plays the worst football team, he just did not play good. So it was really weird, odd night in the NFL. As we will get on to the next game here, the next Monday Night Football game here in a minute. But just complete polar opposite of what I thought would happen tonight. But shout out to the Giants and Tommy DeVito just playing surgical football, and Saquon just really playing good football. And Wan'Dale Robinson coming up huge when it mattered the most. He had a really good game. Shout out to Wan'Dale Robinson. But yeah, it was ultimately it was the Giants' night tonight, and yeah, they played like they were the better team.
Yeah, two really weird games tonight. Really weird. But yeah, I honestly think Saquon was the difference in this game. He was, like you said, every time he touched it, he is so electric. He is healthy Saquon right now for sure. He's playing really good, even when the whole defense knows it's Saquon and nobody else. And yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson for fantasy, you're kind of intrigued by Wan'Dale Robinson. He was really involved. He was making some big plays, got them down to field goal range to win this game. So you love that. I think Jalen Hyatt, anyone that picked up Jalen Hyatt kind of got burned. Didn't really get involved, but I think Wan'Dale and Saquon are actually kind of starts this week. I think Wan'Dale's not a bad flex, and for the Packers, Jordan Love, you're still fine. I think Jordan Love will be a lot better moving forward. This was kind of just a weird game for him, and uh, the Packers running backs aren't really too electric outside of Aaron Jones, but you could start Dillon if you need. And then Tucker Kraft leads the Packers in receiving. So I did say a few weeks ago, if you are down bad at tight end, you need a stash. Tucker Kraft isn't bad. He had 4 for 64 in this one. So that's definitely for tight ends, it's not too bad. So you do like to see that, but I think Christian Watson needs to come back for the Packers to have more success.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean Jordan Love and just the Packers team, they just weren't clicking tonight. Obviously, Christian Watson did probably affect that. But I mean, just a wild night, and I mean, I'm excited to get on to this next game because it's very intriguing what happened in this next one we're about to talk about.
Yeah, let's just get on to the other weird game from tonight, and that was the Titans going into Miami and beating the Dolphins 28-27. Levis is a dog. He is an absolute dog. He's just a gamer. Like what a great bounce back game from him. The resilience from Will Levis, you just love to see it. He threw a silly, memeable pick six at the very
The
beginning.
Titans tried to lose this game.
Oh
Their
yeah.
offense and special teams tried to lose this game. I mean, that's I'm going to say that. I mean, there's two touchdowns in this game that were caused by the offense and the special teams.
Yeah, he threw that embarrassing pick six on a screen at the beginning of the game. And yeah, it was just rough from the start, but Will Levis really bounced back well. DeAndre Hopkins was the best player in the field in this game. He was the best playmaker in this game. So you're happy if you're a Titans fan. It's fun. Will Levis is a dog. He's a resilient guy. He belongs in the NFL. I think he's a starting NFL quarterback. So you want to build around that, and that's pretty fun. The Titans played a really physical good game. They went into Miami and were right with them the whole game. And yeah, a really good Vrabel game. It was kind of seeming like Vrabel wasn't too confident in his interview at the beginning, but they played really well and physical.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what they did? They took away Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle over the top, and they didn't let them get those 2, 3 touchdowns by, leaving Tyreek one on one and letting him literally just scorch down the field past all your defenders. So I mean, they kept a good hood over the offense tonight. Obviously Will Levis had a silly pick. The Titans had a ridiculous their punt return had a ridiculous fumble that, gave the Dolphins the ball at the 10-yard line. They got two scores off of offense and special teams. but were resilient enough to end up winning this game. And their defense came up big when they needed them. We got a big sack on Tua on 4th and 2. And yeah, I mean, it was just a game that I did not expect. It had no outcome of how I thought this would happen. I thought the Dolphins would beat them 70-0. But yeah, I mean, just a weird night. It was like, is it a full moon tonight? Like, what's happening? I mean, this was a wild night in the NFL, and but shout out to the Titans because they do. This is kind of a fun game to win because it gives you a little hope and it shows you the resilience of Will Levis. And DeAndre Hopkins is balling. I love the way they use Tajay Spears. I love the 7 carries and also the 6 targets through the air. That was just perfect. I love the way they finally got him involved like that. That seems like the role he should have.
Yeah, definitely. I guess we'll get into fantasy. Derrick Henry gets the 2 touchdowns. You love that. DeAndre Hopkins 7 for 124 and a touchdown. He was dominant. Tajay Spears was really involved through the air, and Chig Okonkwo wasn't bad. So yeah, just really fun for the Titans. Like moving forward, that gives the fans a lot to look forward to. A lot of positivity around Will Levis's name. So you do love that. And yeah, for the Dolphins, it was just a weird outing. Tua was kind of maybe in his head with Tyreek getting hurt. I don't know. That was just a weird not sharp outing. You do love to see Raheem Mostert getting 2 touchdowns and Devon Achan really getting involved in the receiving and running game. So both of them are starts in fantasy. It's pretty cool. And Jalen Waddle had a pretty good game, kind of filling in for uh, Tyreek Hill playing injured. He was kind of coming in and out of the game. So just an interesting game. Weird for the Dolphins. Kind of feel bad that they didn't come away with it because they would have been first in the AFC. But yeah, crazy game. Weird.
Wild, wild, weird game. Full moon, werewolves are out or something tonight because something was weird in the air. But it was a fun night. It was a fun night to be a football fan and to see the 2 upsets happen.
Yep. Super fun going over all these games. A lot of fun games, fun discussing the MVP debate. I think we came away with the conclusion that Dak will win the MVP, but both are very, very much deserving. So very fun. Very fun episode. Anything else you want to say? Any hot takes for you?
Here's a hot take. Chargers, after I just said they get Brock Bowers, end up with the 3rd overall pick and get Marvin Harrison Jr. and absolutely take over the NFL. Let's go. Hot take for the draft, baby. Let's go. If it's not Brock Bowers, it's number 3 overall pick, and we're getting Marvin Harrison Jr. And you love to see it. Best wide receiver to come out of college in the last decade. Absolutely electric. We changed the franchise. Let's see it happen.
That would be a very nasty duo as a Broncos fan. I wouldn't like to see that. And yeah, tune into our NFL mock draft that we posted just a few episodes ago. We went really in depth and a lot of fun fits in that one. So check out who we had your team picking. And yeah, check out the NFL Seekers podcast on all platforms. Like, subscribe if you liked. And thanks for tuning in. Peace.
Yes, sir. Got to give myself some hope, boys. I'm hanging on. Peace.